Let's recap our teams from our latest 12-team Roto mock draft. Up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Saturday, January 18th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and let's take a look at our teams in this latest 12-team Roto mock draft. Scott was drafting first overall. I was drafting second overall, so back-to-back. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll pull up our teams so you can follow along here. But let's jump in, Scott. Your infield, you had Joey Bart, Gabriel Moreno, Michael Toglia, Ketel Marte, Rafael Devers, Willy Adames, Dansby Swanson as your middle infielder, Eugenio Suarez as your corner. And then in the outfield, you had James Wood, Christian Yelich, Brandon Nimmo, Jurickson Profar, Lane Thomas. Everyone is thinking, man, what's going on with this offense? He also has Shohei Ohtani as his utility bat. So keep that in mind. Scott, how do you think this offense came together here for your first overall team?
Yeah, your eyes are so used to skipping over DH when you're reviewing a team that it kind of throws you when you draft Ohtani first, as I did first overall in this one. Overall, I like it. I think there's a good balance here. Of course, the first three names you read off were maybe the most underwhelming three parts of my lineup: Joey Bart, Gabriel Moreno, a catcher. I obviously took them late, went the bargain route, was happy to get projected starters, at least in those two catcher spots, for as cheap as I went. Michael Toglia at first base. That's a position that can get away from you if you're not conscientious about filling it early. And so once I realized, Casas, Pasquantino, Cody Bellinger were all gone, I decided I'd wait as long as I could reasonably justify at that position. Toglia hopefully will give me a nice dose of power. I think he has 30 to 35 homer upside, but probably with a low batting average and potentially losing his job at some point if it doesn't pan out. But otherwise, once you get past those three, I think it's really strong. I think there's enough batting average there with Ketel Marte and Brandon Nimmo, who I still consider a good source of batting average despite what happened to him last year. I think that was a fluke. Christian Yelich, Shohei Ohtani, all providing good batting average. Power is definitely there between all the early round hitters, and then Toglia and Suarez. And speed, I think, is going to be fine too. Between Ohtani, Yelich, Wood, Lane Thomas was a nice boost. One of my last hitters drafted there, hopefully give me 30 plus steals. Adames could give me 15 to 20, Swanson 15 to 20. Yeah, I think there's enough here of everything. For as heavy as I went with hitter early, my first three picks were all hitters, and I believe it was 6 of my first 7 picks were hitters. I kind of want it to look even better, but I think it's fine, and I don't have much to compare it to at this point. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to call it a W.
All right. Well, let's take a look at that pitching staff since you waited on pitching. Your SP1 was Dylan Cease, followed by Aaron Nola, Max Fried, Bryce Miller, Jack Flaherty, Jose Barrios, and your relievers, Robert Suarez, Jordan Romano, and Aroldis Chapman. Scott, only one pitcher in the first 7 rounds. I think this pitching staff really came together.
I agree. Cease being the last pick of round 4, that was the one splurge there for me. I just thought the value was too good. It's crazy that I was able to get starters as proven as Nola and Fried at the 8-9 turn. But that speaks to how much high-end depth there is at starting pitcher. I talk about how there's this range. It's more or less 15 to 50 in my rankings, where I think they all have the potential to deliver high-end outcomes. Obviously, Nola and Fried are on the higher end of that group because of how proven they are. But I just accepted value wherever I could find it, and there was good value there with those two. And then it continued. Bryce Miller is the 120th overall pick. That felt like a nice luxury for me. Normally he goes around 80. And then Jack Flaherty, same thing. I think he only lasted so long because he's unsigned still, but I think as a 5th starter, I'll certainly take that. Guy was borderline ace last year, had almost 200 strikeouts. And then even Jose Barrios, who was my last starting pitcher taken. It's amazing that somebody that reliable and proven can last toward the end of a 12-team Roto draft, as he did, at least the starting lineup portion of the draft. ERA is going to probably not be much help there. Mid to high threes ERA, but always delivers a lot of innings. Should give me good strikeout numbers, solid whip, wins because of how many innings he's throwing. He's a good choice. Went a little light on the closer side. Robert Suarez, pretty safe as a number one, but then Jordan Romano has health concerns. Roldis Chapman, maybe he won't even be a closer when all's said and done. But I tend to build my roto teams like that, and I'm fine getting 3 guys who, at least as of now, are in line for saves.
All right, looks like a pretty good team. Was it better than mine? We'll find out right after this.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
Welcome back in FBT Express. We're recapping our teams from our latest 12-team Roto mock draft, and I was drafting second overall. And let's take a look at my hitters. I had Will Smith, the catcher from the Dodgers, followed by Tyler Stevenson, Vinny Pasquantino, Jordan Westberg, Austin Riley, Bobby Witt, Andres Jimenez as my middle, Matt Shaw, top prospect for the Cubs, as my corner. And then in the outfield, I have Brian Reynolds, I have Michael Harris, Tyler O'Neill, Parker Meadows, Alec Burleson, and then I did grab a top-end utility bat with Marcell Ozuna. So, it kind of feels like I don't really have big name value here, Scott, but these are all pretty solid players. I actually feel pretty good about this offense. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too, given that you went a little heavier on pitching than I did, and we'll get into how much heavier you went just a little bit. But yeah, I think it's really it's pretty well rounded. Steals a little bit of a concern for me, but there are sources of it. It's certainly plausible that you could be fine in that category. And you may, if it was a head-to-head league, I may want a few more true studs in that lineup. But with as many hitters as a fill out a roto lineup, with as many slots as you're having to get those, as you're accumulating those stats from, you don't necessarily need a star-studded lineup. You just need reliable contributors, and I think you have that. While still having a couple studs, obviously, and Witt and Riley and Ozuna. Yeah, you got some good players here too.
Of course, you have to like this team, Scott. I have 3 Atlanta Braves, so come on, you got to like.
True.
That. I realized, after my first 5 picks, I said, wow, I have 3 Braves on my team. All right, well, hope their lineup bounces back and they're awesome again. Let's take a look at my pitchers. You mentioned that I leaned a little bit more into pitching. Well, I did early on. I took Paul Skenes in round 2 because he fell all the way to pick 23. So that wasn't the plan coming in, but it just felt like the top player on the board. So I took Paul Skenes and then maybe waited a little bit too long for my pitchers after that. I've got Shota Imanaga. I got Joe Ryan, Carlos Rodon. I've got Brandon Pfaadt and Luis Heel. And then my relievers, I have Kenley Jansen, Andres Munoz, and David Bednar. Jansen, still a free agent, but I assume wherever he signs, he'll be a free agent. Obviously,
a closer, yeah.
Top end starter, like Paul Skenes, love to have him. He's better than anyone on your pitching staff, Scott. But when you look collectively, I think I like your entire starter group more than mine.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's pretty clear to me, and it does make me question whether it's worth, at least in a 12-team, or whether it's worth going for the Paul Skenes type early, or Zach Wheeler, or Tarek Skubal, whoever it is. You did manage to build what I think is going to be a quality offense, but I think what happened there is you had to try for that a little harder because you passed up early round hitting more. You passed up that second round hitter specifically. You had to work harder in the middle rounds to make up for that. I think in that middle round range, that 15 to 50 range that I keep referring to, there's a lot of the talented pitcher is a lot more interesting there than a hitter. And so I just kind of loaded up on those guys, whatever came to me. Well, you had to stretch a little more for offense. And so the back end of your pitching staff doesn't look as strong. I think that's basically what happened here. That's not to say this pitching staff couldn't be competitive. It could. It just feels riskier overall.
Yeah, definitely a more volatility, I think, involved with my pitching staff than with yours. All right, who won the draft? Me or Scott? Who had the better team? Let us know in the comments. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.